Good Monday to you, everybody in COMM 245. Welcome to, are you ready for this? Week, boom, bam, 6. We are but 2 short weeks away from the end of the semester. Woo woo! I'll copy to that. What do we have here this morning? Let's see if I can get a focus there. Yoink! Yellowstone National Park. Hiked through it on a number of occasions. Interesting place. Not my favorite of national parks. Little heavy on the rules. Be careful what you do there because you will pay. You will pay for it with either your money or your freedom. I'm not speaking from personal experience, just personal knowledge. But that's enough from me. Let's talk about you. Okay, it's week 6. We're coming down to the end of the semester. Be sure that you're preparing for your final exam, which you will have in the last week. For this week, the module is again going to focus on communication theories, and it's module 6. That this is sort of a follow-up from last week. Communication theories that focus on mass communication. Now, remember, if you haven't picked up this vibe already, that within communication, there are a couple of major categories that it is traditionally broken into. Okay. There's interpersonal communication, that is between individuals. There is organizational communication, that is between groups of individuals. And then there's mass communication, that is out across a number of individuals. All right. So for those of you that don't say go into therapeutic professions, because some of you may go into graduate work in psychology and sociology, and a communication degree is an excellent foundation for that. Right. That sort of work, you'll focus on interpersonal communication or maybe organizational. They'll be working in areas that pertain to mass communication. So we spend a bit of time with that. All right. Readings in the module. Again, as per what I like to do, I'm going to let you wrestle around. You'll be reading chapters 27, 29, and 31 from the Griffin text, and then you have questions to answer. All right. But for today, I'm going to give you 2 videos this week, and today, this video, I want to go over some of your answers from both the assignment from week 3, as well as the quiz that came out of week 4. And the reason for that is that I've noticed a trend amongst you. There seems to be some, lack of clarity, let's put it that way, about what Berger is getting up to in some of his axioms, and then how to read the charts and some of the diagrams that are presented in your book. All right. That you haven't internalized all of Berger's axioms is not a big thing, but I want you to be able to understand when you see data presented in chart form to develop the foundational skills to interpret it. One of the things that is curious to me about the field of communication, the study of communication, is, now this is my opinion. In my opinion, communication is it's a humanities, it's an art. But the field of communication has since like nearly going on 100 years now. Yeah, about 80, 90 years. Has worked very, very hard to present itself as a science, as a hard science thing, something that's quantifiable. I'm looking for a book, and I am not entirely convinced that it is a science. That the best the information. Okay. Um, I think it's more of a craft than it is a field of study that belongs in the STEM area. All right. None as a discipline, as a field of study, it's constantly working hard to convince you and I think itself that it's a hard science, and as such, it spends a lot of time with quantifiable data, that is gathering information, putting it in basic data form, and then subjecting that data to a series of tests, analyses that give numeric results, statistical results. So you have to learn on a foundational level how to read, interpret, and understand these scientific guys, if I can make up a word, quantified results. All right. And I noticed from both the assignment from week 3 that you did in week 4, as well as the quiz, that there's some confusion. So today, for this video, I'm going to review assignment number 3, and I'm going to review quiz number 4. I'll go through all of the answers. So if you missed it, you'll go, oh, okay, I'll get it. And by the way, in terms of feedback on your assignments, I don't like the standardized grading rubric. Okay. And the reason that it's not that I don't want to give you feedback. I'll give you feedback. You want to, call me during my office hours. I'll give you all the feedback you want. All right. The reason that I don't like it is it compartmentalizes aspects of your communication. And what I mean by your communication, see, when you're taking a quiz, or even when you're taking a quiz or a test, that's a communication. All right. You're expressing what two things really. Three things, excuse me. How well do you understand what's being asked of you? How thoroughly have you reviewed the material in anticipation of what's being asked of you? And how well can you communicate it? All right. Those are core skills that you need for life. Did you understand what was being asked / said? Did you prepare by way of absorption of knowledge in anticipation of that? And then have you sharpened your skills as a means by which to communicate it? All right. Rubrics, they pull that process apart and say, well, there's this little bit, and then there's this little bit, and then there's this little bit. And these bits were great, but this one was not so great. When we're communicating with one another, that's not how communications are registered. People don't go, yeah, I can see that he understood what was being asked, but he obviously didn't prepare knowledge in advance of it. He communicates very well. Maybe in the rarest instances, the response is, yeah, he doesn't get it. In other words, the communication is evaluated as a total whole, not as a series of parts. The communication, the sum is greater than the parts. So it's not that I won't give you feedback as to why, say, you got, let's take the quiz, or excuse me, why you got a 70 out of 100 instead of a 90 out of 100. I'll give you feedback. And then I'll make a little note in the note saying, oh yeah, hey, what about this? But I don't like the rubrics, because I do not believe that's how we encounter communications outside of the sandbox that is your classroom in the functional world. And therefore, training that way, compartmentalizing things into this bit and this bit and this bit, as expressed in the rubric, conceptual understanding and critical thinking, interrogation of scripture, relation to personal experience. What does that profit you? All right. So if you're wondering why you're not seeing points in that rubric, that's why. Okay. All right. Anywho, so I'm going to give you 2 videos. Today, I'm going to go through the assignment from week 3 and then the quiz. I'll go through the whole quiz to give you the answers. for this coming week, we're going to be focusing on mass communication. Tomorrow, I'll do a video in which I review the questions from last week and give you the answers that you should be getting. And if the answers that you put forward in the discussion sections, the question sections deviate from that, then you'll know why. Okay. All right. Let's get started. Oh, by the way, a number of you have emailed me and concerning the article summaries, and you say this, let's say from week 3 or week 4 application journal. Okay. And you keep telling me that the link is broken. And I understand that when you click on the link, it says 404 page not found. The reason for that is if you look at the instructions. Now I'll acknowledge, I'll tell you that this was not written as clearly as it could be. Okay, the instructions for this one, particularly for the week 3 assignment. All right, but what you need to do when you click on that link, and it's the regent.edu/lib, which stands for library. When you get that 404 page, all right, what you got to do is, as it says in the instructions, is you can type in library, or you can go down to the bottom and find communication studies. The shortest route to get to what you want is in the search box. Type in library, and then when you get that, look at the PDF there on the assignment sheet, and it gives you the list of academic journals. Type in the name of one of those journals that is in an area that you're interested in. So all you got to do is get to the online library link. It doesn't matter how you get to it. So the link isn't broken. The page that it lands you on is just set up poorly. And you see that 404, which means page not found. You go, oh, well, this dumb thing's broken. It's not, it's the page is not set up well, but it works. Okay. And I'm not, I've spent a lot of time designing websites and evaluating how they work. And I can tell you there are other areas in the Regent website, areas that are just for we professors, instructors, we with one E, that are not set up well either. I mean, there's one that to get to essential stuff for me as an employee, I have to go through something like 4 or 5 clicks. And it's just like, could you have buried this any deeper and make it any more complicated? So anyhow, those of you who write me and say, okay, this isn't working. It is. You just have to put library in there. All right. Let's take a look at assignment number 3 and what's going on with Berger, but more importantly, how to interpret some of this data. So first things first, understand that the authors of your text, that they're not simply telling you in the course of this text everything that is true concerning communication theory, because there's no such thing. There's no such body of truth. Communication theory is an ongoing debate, because remember, at the heart of communication theory is the question, why do people do what they do? And as we've said before, number 1, people are complicated, so it's hard to figure out. And number 2, people are complicated, so the people proposing the ideas, the explanations as to why people do what they do, they come up with different explanations, and the people proposing the explanations, the communication theories, they don't agree. They don't agree on the reason as to why people do what they do. All right, so your authors are giving you both theories that are widely accepted and theories that are not so widely accepted, and older theories and theories that are being debated. The axioms from Berger fall into that group, theories that are being debated. All right, so I got the sense from grading your assignment and grading your quiz that many of you were thinking, well, it's in the book, they must be telling me something that's true. No. Okay, they're just as often telling you about the debate that's going on among communication theorists as they're telling you about, well, this is what we think we know. Because remember, as you go through this course, as you go through life, and this is a whole area in communication studies, by the way, what I'm about to tell you. All right, most, and I mean most, like a considerable majority of what people believe to be true isn't a truth, like, say, a truth of a category. What do I mean by a category? So this is a pen, marker to be specific, but we'll just call it a pen. All right. No, wait a minute. We've got pens here. This is a pen. Okay. It has specific characteristics that make it a pen. It's a fountain pen to be specific. Okay. It's got a metal tip. It has a interior that holds ink. Okay. And you can twist this little screw here and draw in more ink to refill it from bottles of ink. Okay. All of that, steel tip, reservoir, it's got a cap, has a little clip in case I want to wear it in my pocket, which I don't. That's true as an objective fact. This is a pencil. Okay. It does not have a steel tip. It has a graphite, it's got graphite in the center. So it really doesn't even have a tip at all. The center is just sharpened, whether it's manually or mechanically. Pencil sharpener off screen. That sharpens the graphite. It has an eraser. This does not. It does not have a reservoir. There's no way to fill it up with graphite. Okay. These are categorical truths. That is, they are true about the specifics of each of these items. And if we started taking writing implements that we found in the world, we could start putting them in one group or another and say, well, so now we have this third one. Okay. This thingy right here. And we'd say, well, which of these two categories, pen or pencil, is this third one most like? Well, let's see. It has a cap. It has a tip. There you go. It has a reservoir with ink. You can't refill it. All right. It's made out of plastic, as is this. It has some metal and a clip, as does this. So categorically, it is true that this is more like this than this. This is more like this than this. Okay, that's truth. Most of the things that you know in the world do not fit into that definition of what is true. That they're not driven by categories, characteristics. They're driven by interpretation. Yours. Okay, is the world fundamentally a fair or unfair place? That's your interpretation. Is the glass half full, half empty? I think there's actually a third category of person. They say there's two kinds of people. People who see the glass as half full, people who sees the glass, who sees. Excuse me, allergy still. People who see the glass as half empty. I think there's a third. And the people who yell, "Who drank my water?" and get very upset about it. Maybe you know some of those. Okay, that's an interpretation. Most of when we talk about what is true or not is not defined by the element of the thing that places it in a certain category, but our interpretation of the experience. Now, be very careful. Someone's interpretation of the experience of the phenomenon doesn't change the phenomenon. All right. So You experience the world in a way, I experience the world in a way. You might say the world is unfair and the glass is always half empty. I might say the world is full of opportunity and the glass is always half full. That doesn't change the world. The world is what it is. It's our interpretation that changes. All right. That's subjectivity. Objectivity remains, subjectivity changes. So, in things like communication theory, you're getting, your authors are doing a pretty good job in, first of all, presenting to you what they believe to be the interpreted truth of these theories. All right. And also what others believe to be in the interpretive truth of these theories. But when it comes down to it, excuse me, it's about interpretation of experience. How does one interpret the experience? And then what we do by way of force of habit is we slap the word, it's true, I know, I'm certain. When really the only thing that we're certain of is that we have experiences that we interpret. We often mistake our conclusion of interpretation for the nature of the experience. In other words, we come to a conclusion about our experience. The world is unfair. And then we project that and say, it's true, the world is unfair. Which in actuality, the only thing that is true is that our experience with the world, for whatever reason, doesn't matter, has led us to believe that it's unfair. Do you understand? So when your authors are writing this text and they're saying, this is this and that is that, these aren't, don't expect in a lot of courses, in a lot of knowledge, because most of what we know falls into the category of interpretation. Don't expect truth like categories, like pens and pencils. That's not how most of what we decide is true or not is evaluated. We don't. I mean, we might think we do. There's an area in communication that deals with that people mistakenly believe that their interpretation of an experience is the characteristic of the thing. Okay, so now that can be true. For instance, here's the thing. It's got a sharp little point. That's a characteristic. If I stab myself with it, the experience of the characteristic is ow. That's the experience. So in that case, I go, okay, the experience of the thing is the nature of the thing. Pointy. But when you're dealing with much larger experiences with many more variables, see, there's only, variable is just a thing. It could, it's the shape of how thick's the pencil. That's a variable. How bendable is the eraser? What's it made out of? That's a variable. All right. So there's one variable here in the element of this pencil. And that variable is pointiness. I mean, as it relates to what it feels like. Ow, ow, ow. So people will often make the mistake that when they encounter experiences that have multiple variables, many things going on that come at them as a single experience, the conclusion they draw, the world's unfair, the world's fair, people are nice, people are not nice, people are honest, people are dishonest, the conclusion that they draw, they assign to the entire experience or the entire group as if it's a set variable. And it's not. It may be a variable that's true of one, or maybe, excuse me, it may be a characteristic of a variable that's true of one part of the phenomenon, but generally, typically not the whole thing. So when you're reading about theory, don't expect it to be, some discussion of what is true, like, say, I'm so sorry, like say a pencil has a point. That's true. I mean, once sharpened. Do you understand? Okay. And this is a little trick our brain plays on us. Our brain is always asking the question, what does this experience mean to me? And by the way, your brain immediately looks at experiences and passes them through a filter that has three components. The brain asks, is this experience a harm to me? That's typically the first one. Is this a threat to me? This experience, and that experience could be a person, an animal, a food, a landscape, whatever. Is this experience a threat? That's the one we're most attentive to. Next is this experience a help, a benefit? And by the way, within these categories, threat, we break those down into subcategories. Is it a threat to my physical well-being? Is it a threat to my emotional well-being? Is it a threat to my financial future, et cetera, et cetera? Then, second one, is it a benefit? Is it something I can eat? Will it make me happy? Will it enrich me? And then finally, the third filter category in the big filter that is your mind, that if it's no and no to these two, is it of no consequence to me? Now, this is the category that your brain puts most things into. That's why when you walk around in the world, you're not walking around either going, wow, 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 or oh. It's like, meh. Most of the things you see, your brain has decided they don't mean anything to you. They're no consequence. They're neither threats nor helps. And it's like, okay. Now you can experience things in a new and different way that changes that perception. You go, I never realized how beneficial, insert the thing. Not watching videos till late at night could be, or sleeping in a really dark room, or just stick with the sleep theme. All right. So your brain, when it encounters an experience, makes one of those three evaluations, and then tends to stick it in a category and fix it there. And that is what you assume is the truth of the thing. Be on your guard for that by way of how your brain works. All right. It's like the old adage attributed to Mark Twain. It's not what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you think you know for sure that's not objectively true. Okay. Let's talk about Berger and how, these axioms that he lays out, and some of this empirical data and how you read it, and bearing in mind that your authors are not just giving you everything that's true about communication theory. They're giving you some of the debates about what people think is true and may or may not be. Okay, let's start with a week 3 assignment. The question on this one that tripped up a lot of people was the first one. Check out Theorem 13 in Figure 9.1. Does the predicted relationship between self-disclosure and reciprocity match the forecast of social penetration theory? All right, that's a complicated question. I mean, I didn't write it. All right. But it is a complicated question. Okay. Many of you wrote an answer that goes something like this. Let me just, and I won't say whose answer this is, but if you recognize the answer, it's just between you and me. Okay. I believe that when it comes to self-disclosure within the predicted relationship, you know what? Let me go to a different one here. Let's do this. Okay, here we go. Okay. Yes, the predicted relationship between self-disclosure and reciprocity. So this is, check out Theorem 13 in Figure 9.1. Does the predicted relationship between self-discovery and reciprocity match the forecast of social penetration theory? Yes, the predicted relationship between self-disclosure and reciprocity matches the forecast of social penetration theory, according to Griffin. The main route to deep social penetration is through verbal disclosure. The more a person commits to personal disclosure, the more reciprocity they will experience. Okay. Most of you answered the question in that way. That is, that you interpreted theorem 13 to be saying the more reciprocity there is, the more self-disclosure there is. That's how most of you interpreted the theorem. And that's not what the theorem is saying. Okay? So you look at this, again, this is back to, how communication wants to quantify itself. See if I can hold. All right. So this is the theorem chart. And I know some of you are using a digital textbook. So I'm not sure how the pages match the pages in the printed textbook. But theorem 13, notice, so, right here is 13. And notice the minus sign in the box. All right. What does that tell you by way of a quantified expression? Well, here's what it tells you. And you have to read a tad closely in the text. Right, so theorem 13 is the intersection between axiom 5 and axiom 4. Axiom 5 is reciprocity. Axiom 4 is self-disclosure. That there's a minus sign in that box tells you that there is a negative relationship between those two things. If we say there is a positive relationship between two things like reciprocity and self-disclosure, what we're saying in quantifiable terms, in statistical terms, if we say there's a positive relationship, we are predicting that as self-disclosure goes up, reciprocity goes up. If reciprocity goes up, self-disclosure goes up. Then there would be a positive sign in the box. That there is a negative sign in the box is saying to us that Berger, who drew up this chart, or this chart was sort of drawn up to express his axioms and theories, that there's a negative sign, like that little minus sign in the box. This is saying that if reciprocity goes up, self-disclosure goes down. If self-disclosure goes up, reciprocity goes down. That's a negative relationship, okay? Which is different from a positive relationship. So for those of you who answered, say, well, oh yeah, because it does match, because as the one goes up, the other goes down. Or as the one goes up, the other goes up. That's not what it's predicting. Theorem 13 predicts that as one goes up, the other goes down. Doesn't matter which. The question that you're being asked is that true? True not in the sense of, well, I say it's true, but true in the sense of, we would find in social penetration theory. Do you understand? Okay, if you don't, email me or, pop in during my office hour and we'll straighten it out. All right. Most of you missed that question, for those who answered it. Okay. The other one in that assignment that some of you got wrong was the final one. Excuse me. The students of, excuse me. I live in a place in the Midwest. Great people. Allergens, not so good for me. The question was, students of persuasion often wonder whether high credibility or strong arguments sway people more. How would, and a slight typo here, how would an ELM theory, or okay, how would ELM theorists respond to that question? This was a trick question. Now remember, I didn't write it. Okay. Because elaboration methods theorists would say that it's neither that one or the other one. It just depends on the person. So it could be both or it could be neither. All right. And so those of you who picked that up, you got the answer right. Those of you who didn't, that's what the answer is. Okay. Let's take a look at the quiz. Each of the questions, and especially for the fill in the blank, I will usually write out a little, give you a little note saying, this is where you find it, or this is what it is. I'm not necessarily going to give you page numbers. You can go do that for yourself. Okay. So question number 1. As discussed in the critique section, one of the axioms of Berger's uncertainty reduction theory has dubious validity. What does it state? Okay. Again, now this was a bit of a tricky question because that the dubious validity in the printed textbook occurs over on page 115, right there. A dozen years after publishing the theory, Berger admitted that his original statement contained some propositions of dubious validity. Critics quickly pointed to Theorem 17, which predicts the more you like people, the less you'll seek information about them. All right. And that's the contradiction. Berger was saying the more you like them, the more you're going to seek information about them, which may not be true. Okay, so a correct answer is the text states that the motivational assumption, and you can say in axiom 3, this was also problematic. Axiom 3 assumes that lack of information triggers search for knowledge. But as Kellerman, this is at the bottom of the page, and Rodney Reynolds of California Lutheran University discovered when they studied motivation to reduce uncertainty is more than in 1,000 students at 10 universities. Wanting knowledge rather than lacking knowledge is what promotes information seeking in initial encounters. All right, so you could have, many of you did, you could use axiom number 3 as the best example for the sort of, we don't know if this is exactly true. And so if you had, and I'm giving you a lot of latitude in terms of how you're expressing yourself. So if you had something like, and I'll read here from an answer, the text states the motivation assumption of axiom 3 is a problem because it assumes the lack of information triggers a search for knowledge, whereas wanting knowledge, rather lacking knowledge, is what promotes information seeking in initial encounters with others. All right, that's it. In other words, there's an assumption in Berger's work that lack of information triggers a search for knowledge, or high uncertainty causes high information seeking behavior, or as uncertainty declines, information seeking increases. But that doesn't hold out to be true. And in fact, I love this little line over on page 118 in the printed text. All right, up here, there's this snarky little comment. When they talk about when they tested axiom number 3, and they asked, the distinction is illustrated, that is the contradiction in this, illustrated by the story of a teacher who asked a boy, what's the difference between ignorance and apathy? And the boy replied, or the student replied, I don't know and I don't care. Excuse me, I read that and I bust out laughing because that's a demonstration. That's a definition of the two terms that the teacher was asking for, a distinction between the two. That is ignorance, you don't know. Apathy, you don't care. All right. So question number 1, the answer is axiom 3, and the contradiction is no. It doesn't always turn out that that lack of information triggers a search for knowledge. You may have met some of these people. All right. We used to, when I was growing up, that tendency to not know something and then not want to know, we would criticize that behavior in people, or it was criticized in us as children by the quip, oh, I guess your mind's made up. I won't confuse you with the facts. Now, there are interesting theories, which I'm not going to get into, about why it is that people will conclude something about a person, a phenomenon, a group, an ideology, whatever, and then not want any more information. All right, even though they don't have it, they don't want it. All right. Okay. Question number 2, the answer is reduced uncertainty. Question number 3, what are Baxter's Montgomery's 3 overarching rational dialectics? You know, this is back to how you are reading charts or not reading charts, as the case may be. The key phrase here, I'm flipping through my text. The key phrase is overarching. All right. This is from chapter 11. Overarching relational dialectics. All right. So this is the chart. It's 11.1 on page 139 in the printed text. Okay. So you have, let's see if I can get that to focus. Come on now. There we go. You have internal dialectics, external dialectics. Over here, these are the overarching. These apply regardless of whether it's internal or external. Okay, that's what the term means. So integration, separation, stability, change, expression, non-expression. All right. Overarching means applies to both categories. A lot of you miss that. Question number 4 is false. Question number 5. According to elaboration likelihood model, or ELM, in an attempt to process new information rationally, what do people using the central root do? You know, if you answered anything like, they think deep, effortful, perhaps, some of you use the word intensely, they engage in cognitive processing. Okay, it's sort of anything that was the opposite of just reactionary. There's, I know this, or I don't want to know this. That was the answer. Question number 6, consider carefully whether an audience is motivated and able to elaborate on the message. Question number 7, the answer is elevation of negative consequences. Question number 8, okay. An organization doesn't have a culture as one of its characteristics. An organization is a culture. In 10 words or less, how do Geets and Panakovsky define culture? A system of shared meaning and a web. So I was looking for something like, and I should have noticed that 10 words or less, because I don't care how many bloody words you use. Okay, what you need to come away by way of understanding from this question, and this is a common mistake you'll see people make. Culture is not a thing. It's not a piece of clothing. It's not a hat. You see, I've got like a hat that says Regent on it. All right. All right. This is an artifact. Artifact is related. Artifact is the noun to express the idea of artifice, something that represents something. Art is short for artifice. Okay. Cultures aren't, and there's a lot of confusion about this. Certain foods, certain clothing, certain dances, certain expressions. These are artifacts. The artifice of culture. So I really don't like the expression cultural appropriation, because if you wear certain clothing, if you eat certain food, you're not appropriating anything. Now, what is implied in that term, cultural appropriation, is cultural mockery, or mockery of people, which is just not nice. Right? Just don't do that. But you can't appropriate culture by wearing things, because culture is not things. Okay, culture is a system of shared meaning with symbols. They're signs, they're indicators of that shared meaning. Okay, and understand, sometimes unstated. You find, and there's cultures within organizations, within businesses, within various professions, within ethnicities, within religions, and something like, how it is. That's an expression of an understanding that you don't even have to discuss it, but it's not a tangible physical thing like food or a type of clothing. So I was looking for that sort of answer. Okay, a system of shared meaning, a web of significance. All right, and I was looking for some indication that you understood what this means. Distinct from a physical thing. All right, so if you lost points, that's what you lost points for. Okay, number 9, the answer is true. Number 10, the answer is consent. Okay, but I wanted to pause in particular on answers 1, 3, 5, and 8 to make sure that you understood them, especially as it relates back to Berger and the axioms and dubious validity and how to read the charts and so on and so forth. All right. Okay. Tomorrow or maybe Wednesday, I will review the answers from last week. But for this week, enjoy the readings. Hang in there, crew. Week number 6. You've only got a couple more to go. If you're lost, if you're having any problems, please email me or catch me during my office hours. I'd be happy to give you whatever time I have. Look, you want the whole office hour, you get the whole office hour. Nobody else calls. It's yours. And keep up the good work. All right, remember, I'm thinking about you. I'm praying about you. And until the next video, see you on campus. Bye-bye.